I'm not sure you
No, I
understood. I'm
understood.
not sure you understood my point. That's why I mentioned in 1995, when 186 black people who were not getting loans filed a class action lawsuit claiming that they were denied the loan because of racism. Citicorp said, "Okay, here are your loans. The reason I wasn't giving you the loans is because we're afraid you weren't going to be able to pay them back."
I'm not talking about
Fast
that,
forward, they
sir.
weren't able to pay them back, which proved the
Sir, I'm not
Citicorp's
talking
point.
about that. I'm not talking
I know
about
you're
that. I'm
not,
talking about your
because
response.
inconvenient.
So, as promised, I'm going to give my take on the Larry Elder v. The Breakfast Club interview, just like I did the Vivek Ramaswamy v. The Breakfast Club interview. Spoiler alert, they treat Larry Elder just like they treated Vivek Ramaswamy. And I honestly don't think they learned anything from this. I think they just had their talking points written down. And I can't show the video because of copyright, but Charlemagne is just looking at his computer. He probably took his talking points from other liberals out there or his handlers or what have you, and just read them out to Larry Elder. And one by one, Larry Elder dismantled them. Not just his talking points, but the Angela Yee replacement, whatever her name is. She's just a character. But anyway, it starts off with a simple question. Why is he running? Let's play it.
So let's jump right into it. Why are you running for president?
Well, I'm running as an America First mega guy, and we have an America First mega guy running, obviously. So the question is, what do you bring to the table?
You said MAGA.
MAGA.
Okay.
And the answer is, I bring a lot of issues to the table that I feel our side is not talking enough about, if at all. For example, the number one social problem in America, by far, is the epidemic not of COVID, but of fatherlessness. 70% of black kids today enter the world without a father in the home, married to the mother, up from 25% back in 1965. Now 25% of white kids enter the world today without a father in the home, married to the mother. And the stats are clear. Even Barack Obama once cited them. If you're raised without a dad, you're 5 times more likely to be poor and commit crime, 9 times more likely to drop out of school, and 20 times more likely to end up in jail. What's happened? In the mid-60s, with I think the best of intentions, a Democrat named Lyndon Johnson launched what he called the War on Poverty. And since then, we have incentivized women to marry the government and incentivized men to abandon their financial and moral responsibility. When I say this to people, the pushback I get is, well, there are lots of things that are going on, systemic racism, poverty. Here's the problem. If you look at a young black male aged 10 to 43, that's young to me because I'm 71 years old. A young black man in that demo is 13 times more likely to be murdered than a young white man, same demo. Young black man, real young, 19 and under, the number one cause of preventable death is homicide, almost always at the hands of another young black male. Same demo for whites, the number one cause of preventable death is unintentional deaths. That includes drug overdoses, automobile accidents, drownings. It's not until they get to number 4 that death is the cause. In America, 60% of the shootings, the robberies, and the homicides are committed by black people, often against other black people. Of the homicides in this country, half of them are black victims, almost all killed by other blacks. How do you explain that if it isn't for the absence of fathers? Are you prepared to say black people are just genetically inclined to commit more crime? I doubt it. And the go-to reaction often is poverty and systemic racism. Here's the problem. 1940, when there was blatant racism, this is before Brown versus Board of Education, before the Civil Rights Act of '64, KKK was still alive and well, 87% of blacks lived under the poverty line. Now it's about 14%. You can't blame it on poverty. You can't blame it on racism. It is the breakdown of the nuclear intact family, and neither side is talking about it. The left doesn't talk about it because they caused it with the welfare state, and our side does not talk about it because if you're white, you'll be accused of dissing single moms who are heroically raising these kids, or you'll be accused of being a racist, or if you're black, you'll be accused, as I was by the LA Times, of being the black face of white supremacy. Nobody's talking about that. I am.
He eloquently stated the current situation in the black community. I couldn't have said it better myself. The government gave an incentive for the woman to marry the government and for the man to walk away from his responsibilities. Both sides, the man and the woman, are to blame. Okay? Both sides. And it's not until the black community looks within themselves, in each other, that things can get better, can resolve, can improve. when it comes to murders, violence, children out of wedlock, poverty, all these things. It starts with the home and then it branches out. If you don't fix the home, then nothing will get fixed. There's no amount of money that you can pump into whatever program or community, whatever, that'll fix the fundamental issue. It starts with the home.
What are the reasons, if your statistics are right, what are the reasons that you think fathers aren't in the home?
As I said, it's because in the mid-'60s, Lyndon Johnson launched what he called the War on Poverty. In Charlemagne, literally, they sent social workers door to door in the inner city. I remember this, advising women of the availability of welfare provided there was no man in the house. It created an economic incentive for women to marry the government. Same thing with whites. In 1965, 8% of whites entered the world without a father in the home married to the mother. Now it's about 25%.
See, now it's affecting everybody, not just blacks, it's everybody. And for Charlemagne to ask that question, like, why do you think this? Wouldn't you know by now? He has his laptop in front of him. Wouldn't he have this information? All the people he interviews over the years, okay? You don't know this? You haven't educated yourself beyond the talking points your handlers give you? I mean, the Breakfast Club. This is it. This is the the Three Stooges right here.
Let me ask you a question. What do white people do wrong?
What did white people do wrong? He just laid out everything that's going on in the black community. Okay. Laid it out very well. Line by line. Okay. And the only thing he does, he just jumps to white people. Again, no accountability, no self-reflection, nothing. Just blame white people.
Larry Elder.
What do you mean, what do white people do? I'm not worried about white people. I'm worried about what's going on with us.
But if there's systemic racism in this country, which we know it is.
No, I don't say there is. You say there is.
Correct. You say there is all the time. Larry Elder just mentioned systemic racism back in the day, decades and decades ago, not in 2023. There is no systemic racism in 2023. None. Tell me systemic racism. How the hell is Larry Elder able to run for governor? How is Barack Obama able to be president? How is Charlemagne able to have a talk radio show as he does today and avoid, again, I mentioned this last video, he's able to avoid a sexual assault charge, no day off from work, no day off. How did that happen? Systemic racism? Oh, as he sits on his makeshift throne. Give me a break.
I don't believe that.
Oh, you don't believe this?
No, there used to be, obviously. Tell me what you think the number one systemic example of systemic racism is in America.
Oh man, there's so many.
Just give me the most important one you think.
At the top of mind, I'll probably maybe say mass incarceration. Maybe.
Really? During the Great Depression, when 50% of black adults were unemployed, you didn't have this kind of mass incarceration. It's the breakdown of the family.
I'm not going to. I agree with the family part. I'm a black man who is a father to his children. I'm a happily married black man to a black woman. So I'm never going to argue with that part. But I just feel like everything is black with you. Black is wrong. Black people do this and black people do that. And when I asked you what white people do wrong, you said you're not worried about white people at all.
I'm talking about the damage, disproportionate damage going on in the black community. For example, look at these smash and grabs that are taking place in Los Angeles where I live. There's a suburb called Glendale where at a mall recently, a mob of 30 to 40 people, they had masks on, but one guy got popped. He was a black. I think most of those who were doing this were black. And in recent years and times, there have been a number of these in places like Chicago, places like New York. If I were involved in something like that, Charlemagne, I grew up with a dad, just as you're raising your own children. I would have been more afraid of my father than I would about the cops catching me. These kids are afraid of neither. They don't have a father in the home. Cops are demoralized. They're pulling back. Their manpower is short.
Exactly. See, now, as Larry Elder was talking about the problems within the community, within the community, again, Charlemagne just says, talking about black. What about white people? Again, no accountability, no self-reflection. How are you supposed to solve a problem within your home if you don't look in the mirror, if you don't look at what's going on in the home? If you try to look outside the home, blame someone else, it's not going to be fixed. It's not going to be fixed. again, I believe these three stooges are just bought and paid liberal shills. He laid it out. So far, Larry Elder has laid it out perfectly. Everything that's going on. Everything's going on. And it's not improving to the pace that it should be because of people like the Three Stooges on this show.
And as a result, you tell a bad guy you're less likely to be caught, convicted, incarcerated, crime goes up. They may be criminals, but they're not stupid. Mm-hmm. When you say, what do white people do? I mean, this is a country that has struggled mightily to get over its historic racism.
Another note, I made a video about a would-be robber trying to rob 7-Eleven in Stockton, California. Check it out if you haven't seen it. These kids today have no problem going in droves, mobs, flash mobs, going to the stores, smash and grab, okay, and running right out. There's no threat to them, okay? They don't have fathers in the home, so they're not worried about the father. They're not worried about the cops because, like Larry Elder said, they're demoralized. They have no incentive to do their job. The politicians above them, their superiors, are passing these laws and these incentives and these rules to not go against these guys, these thieves. This is the problem. This is the problem. But again, it's white people's fault. It's white people. It's white supremacy. Give me a break. Get out of here, yo.
There was a civil war. There was a big civil rights movement. This is the only majority white country that's ever elected a black president, let alone re-elected a black president. The three biggest cities in America are New York, Chicago, LA. They all have black mayors, even though no city has a majority of black population. The president of Harvard is a black female. Martin Luther King in 1966, Charlemagne, gave an interview to the BBC. This is 2 years after the Civil Rights Act of 64 got passed. And he said, I'm amazed at how many positive changes there have been in America in the last 2 years. Why, if things keep going like this, we could have a black president in about 40 years' time. Mm-hmm. Do the math. Right on cue, Barack Obama, elected 2008. He didn't say there'll be a black female president of Harvard, and there has been. He didn't say there are going to be black CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, and there have been several. He didn't say the percentage of the House would equal the percentage of black people in the population, and it does. He didn't say the three largest cities would have black mayors, and they do. He didn't say the largest and most prestigious organization of doctors, the American Medical Association, would have two black presidents, and there have been. He didn't say the most prestigious organization of lawyers, the American Bar Association, would have two black presidents, and they have. He said president, meaning at that point, I can feel that I've reached the mountaintop. Which
he listed everything that blacks, well, not everything, but significant achievements that blacks have made over the years. And he later notes that we're acting, well, not we, but they are acting. Charlemagne, DJ Envy, and the Angela Yee replacement are acting as if none of those accomplishments happened. Okay, we're still in the 60s and back. All right, systemic racism, white supremacy, KKK, all those things. That's what they keep talking about. Not all. Many have turned around. Many have realized. Many, the ones that are silenced or the ones that don't have a platform like this one, they realize what's going on and they're making improvements. But the ones that have a platform, like the Breakfast Club, run by BET apparently. BET, that's a whole nother story. They're the ones who have the mic to push people down, to make you believe mentally that you can achieve, that you can accomplish. That's the problem. And they put it to their kids. Charlemagne mentioned that he has 2 kids. What can you imagine what he's telling his kids at home about race? Can you imagine what he's just, and kids are sponges. They just take in anything. Okay? But he's already preparing them for mental hardship because they're going to always think they're at disadvantage compared to their peers. This is what's happening right now. Now, let's go to the Yee replacement, Angela Yee replacement, and see what she has to say.
And we're still talking about systemic racism. It's not fair. It's wrong. And you're discouraging black people from working hard. 1990s.
Okay. Mr. Elder, a quick question. Let's just remove the word racism, since that seems to be a word that triggers, a conversation down the water hole. Let's just.
No, it was Charlemagne. He talks about systemic racism all the time. Okay. and now Larry Elder wants to address it correctly, and you can't win that argument, so that's why I want to shut it down. That's basically what's going on.
Focus on the word system.
Okay.
You mentioned that the system was the one that discouraged. And again, we have no problem with agreeing that the family, the black family, should certainly has some room for some improvement. But let's just focus on system.
Room for improvement?
System. Well, we're not going to go down that water. We're not going to go down that water hole. Let's get to the question. So the question is, you said that the system encouraged black women to be single mothers, correct?
I said the welfare state, yes.
The welfare, the system. So who's in charge of the system? Who was in charge of the system?
Well, it was Democrats that passed it.
And who were Democrats? Were they black or white at that time?
Well, at the time, majority of black people were Democrats, as the majority of black people are Democrats now.
Not the voters. I'm talking about the system. Remember, the main idea is the word system. Who was in charge of the system at the time? The Democrats at the time. The system.
See how she's trying to dodge? We, the people, have a right to vote in people into office. They'll just walk into office. Okay? Now, I'm neglecting the fourth branch of the government. Okay, I'm putting them aside for a moment. I'm talking people in Congress, state, Senate, not just federally, but in your own state, your home state. We have the power to vote these people in. Your governor, your president. We have the power. But see how she's trying to negate the power of the voter? Why? Because in the black community, the majority of voters in the black community vote Democrat. And they vote in people who push policies that work against them. You see what's happening now in Chicago. You see all these migrants coming in and scattering around these cities. In Chicago particularly. Now people in Chicago are complaining because money is going to them. You see what's going on in New York City. All these migrants coming in. You have a Democrat mayor there. All these Democrat migrants coming in. You see in California, tent cities. You don't know what, California's insane right now. San Francisco, crazy. But who votes them in? Well, liberals. But when it comes to black people, because this is what we're talking about, black people and how they vote, majority vote Democrat. Is the black vote lost? That's the question I put out there. Is it lost? Or are people waking up? I'm not saying go woke. I'm not saying woke, quote unquote. I'm saying people are waking up and realizing the veil has been lifted and realizing what's going on. I think it's the latter. I think people are realizing what's going on. It's just that the voices of those who are waking up are not as loud as people like Charlemagne, because they have a whole propaganda machine behind them pushing their propaganda. But the best thing we have here right now is this. I'm talking to you. You talking to your friends. You probably making a YouTube channel saying the same thing. We have a voice. We can talk. We can share thoughts, ideas, information. We're in an information age. Okay? We don't have to just rely on what's on mainstream media or who's the popular celebrity out there and what he or she has to say. No. You and I have a voice too. Get a mic, make a video, say your piece. You have a comment, leave it below in this video. Okay? I'm trying to encourage you all to spread the word. We have power in this country, each and every one of us. Let's keep moving.
I'm just going to Charlemagne's point about white or black. Was it white Democrats in charge of the system or black Democrats in charge of the system?
Well, if you're prepared to say that Lyndon Johnson did this viciously with an intent to destroy the black family, I disagree. He did it with the best of intentions. And if you look at the New York Times, which is left wing, the Washington Post, which is left wing, they cheered all of this.
Right. And what I'm asking, was it white people? So I'm going to ask again in case my mic's not coming through clearly. Was it white people in charge of the system or black people in charge of that system that helped break down the black family? It's a simple yes, just a simple question. White or black?
Well, you didn't have to go on welfare unless you voluntarily chose to go on welfare. The inducement was put there by Democrats, by the left.
Correct. Okay. Democrats,
most black people were Democrats, and they voted for these white people
Not
too.
voters. I said who's in charge of the system.
Well, who put them in charge?
Was Lyndon Johnson white or black?
Who put them in charge?
Maybe that'll help you.
Fine. Lyndon Johnson was white.
Thank you.
Okay. But if your argument is that the reason he did it is because of racism, then I disagree. He did it because of.
That's not my argument. I just asked you a simple question: was he white or black, Charlamagne?
See, she has nothing. She has nothing. Absolutely nothing. It gets worse with her. It gets worse with her, but she has nothing. She just wanted him to state that Lyndon B. Johnson was white. Yeah, he was white. Okay. And who voted them in? Who voted them in? Again, she wants to diminish the power of the voter. That's who she is. So Charlamagne's all about white supremacy, all about systemic racism, and this hyena, this insufferable woman, I don't know what you call her. She's all about just diminishing the power of the voter. You. That's it. It's pseudo-intellectuals. They have a mic, and they think they're saying something so profound. Look, I'm a guy with a mic. I'm just talking to you. I'm giving my 2 cents, okay? You don't have to like me or agree with me, okay? And I'm just talking, all right? I'm not trying to paint myself as some guy who knows it all, right? We're all wrong from time to time, and we're right from time to time. That's it. That's how it works. But this woman, she's discouraging black people. That's what she's doing.
Rather than deal with what's going on, the pathology that's going on in the inner city, you want me to talk about how bad white people are,
No,
which I don't think is a particularly productive thing to do.
It's not productive at all, but that's all he has. He looks at his laptop. I don't know if someone's texting him. I don't know if he just has the talking points listed there in his notes. Just go back to white supremacy. Go back to systemic racism. You know, people keep saying that. It's not going to mean as much anymore. It doesn't mean anything to me at all, but you're just watering down. Like the words racism, anti-Semitism, all those words are watered down. They're watered down because people abuse those words. I'm looking at you, Jonathan Greenblatt. I'm looking at you, SPLC, ADL.
Well, I think there's a cause and effect, but if we can't talk about the cause, which I believe is systemic racism and white supremacy, the FBI says.
Well, I just told you, if it's systemic racism, please explain to me how it was when America really had systemic racism in 1940. 87% of blacks lived under the poverty line. Again, this is during Jim Crow era. My father is from Athens, Georgia, grew up in Jim Crow. My mom is from Huntsville, Alabama, grew up in Jim Crow. 87% of blacks lived below the poverty line. This is before Brown versus Board of Education. You did not find these kind of black on black crime.
Probably because we had no
choice. But they still were living
below
the poverty line, though, sir.
I'm sorry?
You're forgetting the fact that they were still living below the poverty line. You're picking and choosing, saying this was good, but this was bad.
Okay.
The bottom line, they end between the poverty line. But let's move forward.
Well, can I just address that?
Yeah, let me just make a statement and move forward without you answering the question. Yeah. Let me just continue to be rude to my guest. I know you're my guest and you're my home, but let me just treat you like a. Let's keep moving.
In 1940, 87% of blacks lived under the poverty line. 1960, that number had fallen to 47%. That's a 40-point drop in 20 years. That's the greatest 20-year period of economic expansion for black people in the history of America. Again, well before Brown versus Board of Education, well before the KKK imploded, well before we had race-based preferences. Why? Because it was rare for a black kid to be raised in a family without a father in the home, a strong belief in Judeo-Christian values, a belief in patriotism, even as America wasn't applying these values to black people, obviously, and a belief in entrepreneurship.
Now, the only thing I will object to is the whole Judeo-Christian values. I would just say Christian values, but that's just, me talking. But what the other stuff he said was pretty accurate.
All those things are now under assault by organizations like Black Lives Matter, Charlamagne. Black Lives Matter had on their website an attack on the nuclear family. The founders are self-described Marxists, trained Marxists. Marx wanted to dethrone God, was an atheist, and Marx did not believe in capitalism, let alone entrepreneurship. All the things that made black people still survive in virulent racism are now under attack by organizations like Black Lives Matter.
Charlamagne is all about them, even though, like Larry Elder said, they weren't for the nuclear family. They were against the nuclear family. They were all living a different lifestyle, let's say. They stole money from people. They took advantage of people. They took advantage of people's emotions. And now look, it's dead. That whole movement is dead. Okay? Y'all having these signs. Some of you have BLM signs and out there. Why? This is the thing. Let me get into this. Why do blacks always have to segregate themselves into something, Black Lives Matter, historically black college, you name it. Black excellence. That's another one. Black excellence. No, there's just excellence. Okay, there's such a thing as black excellence. Just excellence. Black love. No, how about just love? Loving one another. Okay, again, racial lens on. You have a racial lens on. You're gonna just keep thinking that default. That's your default setting, just like it is with Charlemagne, just like it is with Envy, just like it is with this Angela Yee replacement. That's it.
Those things have always been under attack by white supremacy. You can go back to things like whether it's the Tulsa race massacres. Like every time black people do create these systems that are our systems and we are the entrepreneurs, it seems like white supremacy finds a way to destroy it.
Every time, look, the Tulsa massacre, within about 5 years, that whole area was rebuilt. It was not even called the Black Wall Street until after it was rebuilt. And it was rebuilt, by the way, by black people without one dime of government money.
Yeah, but who destroyed it to begin with?
Oh, no government money. Oh, no government money. So you mean blacks were able to do it themselves without the government? Huh. Interesting. But today, fast forward to 2023, only thing people like Charlemagne talk about is, how the government should help us. People like Roland Martin, people like Tariq Nasheed, people like just name them. Just name all these black influencers who are just race baiters, okay, in disguise. That's all they are. I'm not afraid to say it. That's all they are.
It was racists who destroyed it. No question about it. We've had race riots, but so have Japanese.
And by the way, the burning, it didn't happen this year. Okay, just keep that in mind. And here comes the Banshee once again.
So you do agree that there's racism? I'm just so confused.
I never even came close to saying. I never came close to saying there was no racism.
You just saying you don't think it's systemic racism?
Not anymore. Obviously, there was. We had something called slavery. We had something called Jim Crow.
That destroyed black. Hold on, sir. That was the system that destroyed Black Wall Street. It's the same system right now that's not even wanting to pay those same living descendants, because I know your position on reparations, but those same living descendants of Black Wall Street.
Okay.
And then you go on to say that this
reparations is garbage. I'm sorry. Look, I'm not for reparations at all. I mean, who pays for it? The taxpayers? Who gets the money? Huh? How much of the money? How the person who gets it, how are they going to spend it? Honestly, this whole reparations thing is just another talking point that Democrats use to buy your vote. Just like Biden's doing right now with the student loan thing. Student loan forgiveness. Which is the Supreme Court shut down, and now he's trying to find other ways to do it. Again, how about people who actually went to school and, pay for their loans? You're able to find ways to get their loans paid. People who went to school, who sought out degrees that would actually earn them good money so they could actually pay back their loans. Instead of going to class for, liberal arts or gender studies. Something that won't get you like more than $20,000 a year or something like that. And look, if you chose that, sorry, if you're listening, you chose that career, or that degree, sorry. You were swindled. By your guidance counselor or whomever. You were swindled.
The system, the quote unquote system, is also trying to destroy President Trump. So I'm just so confused on, do you believe that the system can destroy or not? You pick and choose, sir. And that's what's
the deep state is trying to destroy Donald Trump. Okay, the deep state, the fourth branch of the government, that's what's trying to destroy Donald Trump. That's pretty simple, but she doesn't get it.
So confusing to me. You just said it wasn't racism. Now it is racism. When it was time to build it back, there was no racism.
I said it wasn't systemic racism. Let's talk about.
So what are you just hung up on the word system?
Can I just make this point, Charlemagne, please? Let's take Chinese Americans. Chinese Americans were the first ethnic group to be excluded with an immigration act in the late 1800s. They had riots against Chinese in L.A., in San Francisco. There were laws that prevented Chinese Americans from participating in the laundry business. I'm in California. California, of course, rounded up Japanese Americans during World War II. There were laws that prevented Japanese Americans from owning farmland. The average Japanese American household has a higher per capita income than the average white household.
That's true. That's true. Asians are doing better than whites. Of course, according to places like the University of Maryland, Asians are minorities. It's just, it's crazy. Harvard University, Asians, we got to keep them out. Come on. Of course, Asians were pissed off about that one. Rightfully so. I'm glad you Asians stood up tall. Shout out to you guys. But they're doing better than whites. They're doing better than whites. You don't hear blacks complain about that. You don't hear about, these Asians. You don't hear blacks talking about Asians much. Talk about white people, not Asians. Huh.
The average Chinese American household has a higher per capita income than the average white household. How does that happen? It happens because of a strong belief in family. It is rare for a Chinese American or a Japanese American kid to have a child outside of wedlock, and a strong belief in education and a strong belief in entrepreneurship.
Very true. Very true. Now, before we continue going over the interview between the Breakfast Club and Larry Elder, I thought we would shift gears just a moment to go over an article that Larry Elder wrote back in 2017. Now, the subject matter is not exclusive to just Larry Elder. Other publications wrote about the same thing around that time. But since we're talking about Larry Elder, I thought it'd be important to go over his take on the situation that was going on there back in 2017. Black on black racism at Cornell. A Rasmussen poll taken in 2017 asked American adults, are most white Americans racist? Most Hispanic Americans racist? And are most black Americans racist? Of the three groups, the winner was blacks. 37% said most blacks were racist. 18% felt most Hispanics were racist, and 15% said most whites were racist. 38% of whites felt most blacks were racist. Even blacks agreed, with 31% saying most blacks were racist, while 24% of blacks thought most whites were racist, and 15% believed most Hispanics were racist. This brings us to Cornell University's Black Student United and whether the organization is engaging in racism against blacks. The BSU complains that the prestigious Ivy League school admits too many blacks from Africa and the Caribbean. We demand that Cornell admissions to come up with a plan to actively increase the presence of underrepresented black students on this campus, the BSU student group said in its demands. We define underrepresented black students as black Americans who have several generations, more than two, in this country. Hold the phone. Isn't the mantra of modern higher education, quote unquote, diversity, inclusion, and overcoming disadvantage? If so, the black, African, and Caribbean students would seem to know all three. Maybe the problem is that it is tough to explain why so many black foreign applicants outperform American-born blacks on what some call culturally biased standardized tests. A 2007 study by Princeton and University of Pennsylvania sociologists examined the standardized test scores of black students enrolled at 28 selective universities. As to the SAT, the test most colleges use as an important factor in offering admission, the study found that foreign-born black college-bound students earned a statistically significant advantage on SAT scores, averaging a score of 1,250 out of 1,600 compared to 1,193 average points for their American black counterparts. This explains in large part why first or second generation black immigrants made up 27% of black student bodies at colleges nationwide. In the Ivy League, black immigrants comprised 41% of black students. What is the basis for the black students' protest? Don't black foreigners face even more obstacles? After all, America spends more on education, K through 12, than the top 34 industrialized countries, save Switzerland, Austria, Norway, and Luxembourg. New York City and Washington, D.C. annually spend approximately $21,000 and $15,000 per student, respectively. Of course, this is from 2017, so just keep that in mind, guys. It could be more right now. BSU might want to consider the letter to the editor of the Wall Street Journal, written by a man from Congo. I grew up in the Congo and have numerous friends in the US from the Congo and other African countries who are here for an education or a better life. Every one of them is grateful for the opportunity to secure an excellent education. Most come here from different cultures with minimal money and limited English language skills. Interestingly, I've never heard one complain about discrimination, obstacles, or being a victim. Rather, they are grateful. Just compose this with Cornell's Black Students United, whose members feel they should be treated better than every other color or race if they have ancestors who've been here for more than 2 generations. The counterintuitive posturing of American blacks denying other blacks from Africa or the Caribbean is appalling. first-generation African and Caribbean students have more obstacles to overcome to get into any university, much less a prestigious one like Cornell. Furthermore, the liberal American blacks who worship at the altar of diversity and victimhood should welcome real Africans or Caribbeans versus seeking preferences for those American blacks who truly have the superior advantage of having grown up in the United States. If my Congolese friends are grateful for their opportunities here and have more challenges to overcome, why should American blacks get special treatment? Call this action what it is, racism, and it's being pushed and protected under the guise of alleged victimization and preferential treatment at the expense of others of all colors and walks of life. So I challenge the BSU folks to start focusing on the concept of succeeding in life instead of always dwelling on the idea that the system is rigged against them. The black immigrant culture rejects the victocrat mentality embraced by so many American blacks. In the Triple Package, I suggest reading that book, guys. In the Triple Package, a 2014 book about immigrants' children, a son of Nigerian-born parents says, if you start thinking about or becoming absorbed in the mentality that the whole system is against us, then you cannot succeed. Bravo. Exactly. Rather than complain about the success of foreign-born blacks, why not give failing urban schools some competition through vouchers to give parents greater choice in where to educate their children, a policy currently being pushed by the Trump administration. Again, this is back in 2017. Keep that in mind. In the Detroit Public School District, for example, just 7% of 8th graders are proficient or better in reading, and just 4% are sufficient or better in math, despite total expenditures per student of over $18,000, according to the 2015 National Assessment of Educational Progress Test. Isn't this the real problem? I say this is something to think about. Now, just one more article before we go back to the video, okay? The Color of Wealth in Boston, a joint publication of Duke University, the New School, and the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston, 2015. Now, while I read this, please focus on the differences between American-born blacks and blacks from the Caribbean. Non-white households have only a fraction of the net worth attributed to white households, while white households have a median wealth of $247,500. Dominican and U.S. blacks have a median wealth of close to zero. Of all non-white groups for which estimates could be made, Caribbean blacks households have the highest median wealth with $12,000, which is only 5% of the wealth attributed to white households in Boston, MSA. Now you can see the net worth disparity here between whites and other ethnicities, but I really want to focus on this right here, US black versus Caribbean black. Okay, you see the difference? You see the difference? Why is there such a gap? Why do you think there's such a gap? Leave a comment below. Total assets, net worth, you see it there. This is from 2015. Why is the gap there? You see that? You see this? Leave a comment below. Let me know. Let the conversation flow. Now let's get back to the video. I'm going to save the rest for part 2. So this will be part 1 of 2 parts in this video because it's pretty long. I want to go through what Larry Elder had to say to the Breakfast Club. And it gets worse. It gets worse with this that banshee of a woman who makes a great case for passport bros. I will say that. She makes a wonderful case for passport bros. But I'll get into it further later on and make another video. And I do appreciate you watching this till the very end. I hope you found it informative. Please like, share, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell to get notified of future videos. Until the next one, take care.